So let me start by thanking Do for inviting us here. I mean, we've been proud to partnership with Do now for over 10 years, and we're very humble and privileged to be invited to speak here today. So today, I'm going to talk about the most fascinating subject on Earth. The most fascinating and interesting subject on Earth. And that is, I'm going to talk about you, right? I'm going to talk about your part in cybersecurity. So let's start. We live in a wonderful world of opportunity. No time in human history has anyone lived in such a glorious time. And you know what? The technology is getting better and it's getting deeper ingrained into our lives. With cloud, with big data, with smart cities, thinking about the Internet of Things, thinking about machine-to-machine communication that's coming down the line. This is genuinely a wonderful time in human history. We're still trying to catch up with what that means. So, thinking about where we are on standards and structures and codes of conduct, and what does privacy mean? And what does all these regulations mean that we haven't quite got to? And there's no kind of international alignment on what these terms mean. So we've got quite a lot of work to do to still define the rules for the new world, because the technology is moving faster than the rules. So we've got a bit to do. But then when we think about the benefits and risks, as we just heard from the governor, the benefits have been massive over the last 25 to 30 years in terms of economic growth, in terms of health, in terms of education, in the fact that we now have global parity. If you want to be in the IT profession, you don't need to move to California anymore, which you did when I was a kid. And that's a wonderful thing, because that helps us build our communities in our communities. And that gives us a global level playing field. And the only limit we face in this wonderful world we live in is the limitation of our imagination. If we can think it, you know what? We can genuinely make it happen. And how great is that? However, it does come with some risks. In the whole history of humankind, crime has always existed. And guess what? It's still going to exist tomorrow in the new world. It's going to be different. Definitely going to be different, and it's never going to go away. But the bad guys, they're very creative. Now, we like to think that we're creative on the technical side of the house. Well, you know what? They're equally creative, and they're innovative, and while there's cash to be made by stealing things, they will steal things. And they can rely on luck. They only need to get lucky once. It's an asymmetrical relationship between the good guys and the bad guys. The bad guys only have to get lucky once. We can't rely on luck. We've got to rely on professionalism, expertise, vigilance. That's what we're going to rely on. We've got to respond in a different way than the bad guys are attacking us. So, who's responsible for sorting all this out? Well, it's kind of all of us. Now, I'm just going to talk about 4 particular stakeholders, but there are many, many other stakeholders involved in this. I'm going to talk about the vendors. I'm going to talk about the enterprises, the corporations, government, and then the citizens. So let's start with the vendors. This applies to any corporation, government agency, NCO. We all have a similar structure. We may do different things in our organizations, but all of our organizations have a simple structure. We have leadership, we have processes, and we have people. So when we're thinking about cybersecurity, as the governor said, we've got to build it in, not bolt it on at the end. Because if you bolt it on at the end, it's expensive and it never works. So when we're thinking about how we're going to design our organization for cybersecurity, the attack surface is massive, so we've got to build it in across the entire organization. And it starts with the top. If the people at the bottom of the organization get the sense that the leader is not taking it seriously, they won't take it seriously either. Oh, they're just paying lip service to it. They don't really expect us to do that. The boss just says that because he thinks he should say it. No. When the boss says it, he's got to mean it. So in our case, our founder and CEO, Mr. Ren, he's made it absolutely clear. Cybersecurity is about our survival. Cybersecurity will never outweigh commercial interests, because when you allow commercial interests to outweigh cybersecurity, then that means you're going to fail. So you've got to drive that mentality into your entire organization. And as the governor said, everyone in your organization is an attack vector. Whether you're in customer service, or you're in physical security, or you're just the cleaner, you have an influence on the security of your organization. And if your staff don't understand that, then that's a problem. So you've got to have that push into the mindset of your staff. And it starts with looking at every single process in your organization. So you start with the leadership, having a strategy. Whether that's a company strategy or a national strategy, you've got to have a strategic approach to how you're going to address it. Making sure that you standardize your processes. Because if they're standardized, they're repeatable. And if they're repeatable, they're predictable. And if they're predictable, you can make them better over time. So remove the randomness in the way you're working. Be conscious of the laws and regulations. So we operate in 170 countries. That's 170 different laws and regulations. So you make sure that your staff actually know how to execute locally within the framework. And people, of course, everything. People do lots of things for you in your organization. They do lots of things. But they're always guaranteed to do two things. They cost you money and they make mistakes. People always make mistakes at some point. So you try and minimize the mistakes by making sure you have training in place. There's a difference between compliance, training, and awareness. Compliance, very simple. Once a year, we get all of our staff in a room, I shout at them for 30 minutes, and at the end of it, they all sign a piece of paper saying they've understood cybersecurity. That's compliance, right? And then when the auditor comes round, I show the auditor the piece of paper to show that all of my staff have been shouted at and said they understood cybersecurity. It's great for the auditor, it's worthless as far as the education of your staff are concerned. That's compliance. Training is about how is this cybersecurity specific to their role. So you train your sales engineers differently to your customer service staff, to your software engineers, to the guys in the accounts department. It has to be relevant, it has to be specific to their task so they can understand why they are actually involved and responsible for cybersecurity. Then the last piece is awareness, little and often, constant reminders. Remember, the bad guys just need to get lucky once. We need to be on our game every single moment of every single day. So awareness is little and often, frequent reminders of why they're doing this, why they are important to the business, why they are your front line of defense. We're a vendor, so research and development is important for us. You may not be a vendor, but you'll still have innovative people in your business. And in those innovative people, you want them to think security first, feature second. Drive that in. Verification. We have a very simple rule in Huawei. It's called the ABC rule. Assume nothing, believe no one, check everything. Very cynical, but that's the truth. Because human beings have a tendency to try and cut corners, right? I could spend an extra 15 minutes and make sure I change all the passwords on this database, or I could go and have a cup of coffee. So you want to make sure the guy spends the extra 15 minutes on the passwords and has the coffee afterwards. Right? ABC rule, very important to us. Third-party suppliers. No company that I know of builds absolutely every component of everything they make. I don't know of any company who does that anymore. Right? Certainly we don't. If I look at our devices, and I happen to carry a phone, right? I know that 30% of the components in this device come from Chinese manufacturers. I know that 32% of the components in this device come from US companies, about 20% from Taiwan, and the rest comes from the rest of the world. So there's very little point in me focusing on the 30% that comes from China and ignore the 70% that doesn't come from China. So therefore, supply chain management is absolutely critical. You probably all buy from different suppliers. Even if it's just your catering, you buy from outside vendors. So say you're just buying your catering, you're just buying food from them. How does the food get delivered? How does that food get into your premises? Who's carrying that food into your premises? And when they're on your premises, what can they access? So think about supply chain management in all of its areas. Manufacturing. I'm a manufacturer. We have components come in and products go out. It's important that we manage that entire process. In your organization, you may not be a manufacturer, but you'll have processes. So make sure you've got your processes documented and you're managing that process. And having that process, cybersecurity built in as part of that process, right? Delivery services, people on the field going out doing things. You want to know what they're up to? And then when we think about incidents, the worst time to write a process is when you're in the midst of the incident. That's the worst time to come up with how you're going to fight an incident. So make sure you've defined your incident process in advance. You know it's going to happen. It's going to happen, right? So make sure you've planned for it and you've practiced it. And when the incident happens, everyone knows what to do because they've practiced it, right? They know how to do their shoes up because when they were a child, they were trained how to do their shoes up. Now they don't even think about how to do up their shoes. They just do up their shoes. So you want to make sure that your incident processes are well understood so everyone just does it. They know what to do and they just execute. And then audit. There's nothing like someone else checking your homework. When I was at school, I did my homework, and when I took it to school, somebody else checked it because no one trusted me to check my own homework. And that's where audit comes in, right? Make sure you're auditing. So, whether you're a vendor or you're a government agency or an NGO or a corporation, you will have processes and you need to make sure it's built in. Enterprises, so who's running your networks, whether it be a carrier, an over-the-top provider, or anyone who's involved in delivery of services, what's their responsibility? We've already talked about what the manufacturers are doing, but as far as the organisers of the network are concerned, we've built in security into the device. They need to design in security into the networks in layers. So the similar processes applied to production of products need to be applied to building of networks. And that's in the design stage, the implementation stage, the operational stage, the maintenance phase, making sure we understand how things are patched. And the classic attack vector is when the network operator makes sure their live system is heavily patched, up to date, and the backup system, oh, we'll leave that a couple of weeks. We'll get round to that later. And it's the classic attack. You attack the backup system because you know that in most cases, the backup system gets patched afterwards. And sometimes it's a long time afterwards. So, thinking about how you're going to operate and maintain your network, quite important. And it's defense in layers. Now, I joined the telecoms industry back in 1980. And back then, cybersecurity to a telco, as it was the post office in the UK, that just meant I keep all the people out of the telephone exchanges, and that'll be fine. That's all I had to do. As long as people can't get into our exchanges, that's security. The world's moved on a little bit. The world is subtly different to 1980, right? Now it's about, there's so many ways to attack a telecoms network which didn't exist in 1980, so we've got to have defense in layers. They will get in. No question they'll get in. So when you're thinking about this, don't worry about why they're attacking you. There's too many reasons why people can attack you. You're never going to figure out all the reasons why people can attack you. What you're interested in are the three hows. How are they going to attack you? How are you going to defend yourself? And how are you going to react when you are attacked? What's your response? And when you're considering the three hows, think about what you're defending. Because if you have a really big network, the chances are you can't defend all of it. So you've got to decide what's really important to you. I think every organization I visit has an asset register. They can tell you how many computers they own, how many desks they own, how many chairs they own. There aren't that many organizations that I visit who have an up-to-date and accurate information asset register of what information they're holding, where is it, and how valuable it is. Have they prioritized where their information is, and are their defenses appropriately prioritized around that priority list? Not many, unfortunately, or not enough. So we need to do more on that side. And it is about policy. It's about process, and it's about people. We keep coming back to the people thing. And then it's government. So we're going to ignore law enforcement for a moment, because they've got a lot going on. But when we think about government, leadership, they have a unique situation in society to provide leadership around cybersecurity. Thinking about how they're going to drive a national strategy. What's important to the nation? What are the nation state going to say is sacred, and how are they going to engage with their populace to make sure that they live in a safe environment that can prosper? So having that national strategy is key. Critical infrastructure. Disconnecting the water supply because of a cyber attack is now a possibility. 30 years ago it wasn't, but now it is. And when we're thinking about our power stations, and when we're thinking about the water supply, these are now targets for cyber attack. And it doesn't take much to destabilize a society when those critical infrastructures are taken offline. So the government needs to have a national strategy. They need to think about how they're going to protect critical infrastructure. And then education. There's a difference between educating someone and scaring them. We want citizens to get the benefits of the technology that we've delivered over the last 25 to 30 years. And we're not going to get that if we scare them away from the technology. If we tell them, it's way too dangerous, don't touch the phone, don't touch the phone, because it's way too dangerous for you to touch the phone, right? Don't use phones anymore. That's not really a message we want to convey. So it's about educating people, and the government the best place to do that. International cooperation. The fact is, no company, no multinational, no country can defeat cyber attacks on their own. None of us have the capability to do that because we are against an industrialized attack team. It's not people in their back bedrooms anymore. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that we're up against. So therefore, we need to be organized in the same manner. And we need international cooperation to do that, because we're only as strong as the weakest link, because the network is connected. So we need to be connected. Our standards need to be connected. Our approach needs to be connected. We need to work together to set standards for the future. Government can do that better than the rest of us. And then the citizens. Here's the thing. Citizens, a large number of these citizens, they work for us. They're our employees, right? So here's the thing. If we train them well at work, they will hopefully take those behaviors home and behave well as citizens at home. And they'll tell their wives and partners and their children and their mothers and fathers, and maybe they'll realize the landscape they're working in. That if something looks too good to be true, it's probably not true. I don't know many Nigerian princes. Even though they keep emailing me, telling me that they'd like to send me money, I don't know very many of them. And here's the thing. If I don't know them, they probably don't know me either. So therefore, I probably don't want to reply to those Nigerian princes who want to send me money. I think that's too good to be true, is my view, so I don't. Be aware of the social engineering thing. So your employees, imagine for a moment you work in customer service and you're sitting at your desk at customer service and the phone rings. You answer it, and the guy at the other end says, my name's Dave Francis, and I'm the cybersecurity officer, and I've got a problem, and you need to reset my password immediately. And the guy on the phone thinks, well, I know Dave's quite senior. I better do it. Dave, I need to confirm who you are. No, you don't. You don't need to confirm who I am, because I am Dave Francis, and you will do it, and you will do it now. And if your customer service person gets scared and changes that password when it's not me, that's a problem, right? So the customer service person needs to understand a bit about social engineering, and they need to take that home with them. So when someone calls them at home and says, I'm from your bank, and your account's been hacked, and I need you to give me your password now so that I can get your money back, they need to think, maybe I won't. Right? Now, as leaders of the company, we also need to learn. We also need to learn that when we do genuinely have a problem with our password, we don't ring up customer service and shout down the phone at them and demand they ignore the rules to change our passwords. Right? So, the customer service person needs to learn, and guess what? We need to learn as well, which is less interesting, but it's true. You get a lot of free technology. When you buy a laptop, a tablet, or a phone, you get a lot of free technology. We need to encourage our staff to switch on the security features that come with the products and not just ignore them. Don't turn on the antivirus after you've been infected. Turn it on before you get infected. Right? So we need to make sure our citizens understand where they are. So we've talked about 4 stakeholders. So here's the thing. When we think about who's got the most power, who's got the most power to change the cybersecurity landscape? International agreements, governments, regulators, standards bodies? No. They haven't got the most power in this equation. The guy who's got the most power to drive change? It's us. That's the good news, my friends. It's us. We can make the difference because we all buy things. And there is no one more powerful in the world than the buyer. That's a fact. The buyers drive everything. So if we can educate the buyers will force everyone else to change. Because the buyers, instantaneous. If tomorrow everyone in Dubai says we will only buy cell phones if those cell phones are painted green, by the day after tomorrow, every cell phone in Dubai that's sold will be green. Because if no one will buy anything that's not green, guess what? We'll only make green cell phones. It's the power of the buyer. And you're a buyer, whether you're a citizen who walks into a store and buys a cell phone, or you're a government that has a buying policy that says, unless you meet these standards, we're not going to buy from you. Or a corporation, or an NGO. Anyone who's involved in buying, start demanding what you're going to buy. I'm not going to accept this, well, we're still figuring it out stuff. You're going to demand security is built into your devices. Right? No one's got more powerful than the money that the buyers hand over. So we've got to think about that. Right? So, we've got to educate the buyers. We published a white paper a couple of years ago that said these are the top 100 questions that we ask our vendors. And these are the questions we get asked when people buy from us. Let's have a starting point. They might be right, they might be wrong, but it's a starting point. If we can educate our citizens when they're at work to say, this is what cybersecurity means to you when you're working for us between 9 and 6 or 8 and 6, whatever your hours are, and they take that home, and they take those behaviors into the store when they're buying a cell phone, and the second question they ask when they go into the store to buy the cell phone is, how many pixels is the camera? And the first question they ask is, can you describe the security in the camera? Now tell me about the pixels. That'd be a much better world. Because our cell phones would be much more secure if the first question was security and the second question was pixels. Right? So, we should think about what it means to be a buyer of technology and the power that gives us. Moving forward, so there's lots of stakeholders, and every single stakeholder must, I beg you, must cooperate, because none of us can fight this on our own. So we need to be customer-centric. What's in the best interest of the users of this technology so they can continue to get the health benefits, the education benefits, the economic benefits of security? Be customer-centric. What's in the customer's best interest? We need to be open, transparent, and humble. We need to share ideas. We need to be humble because none of us are perfect. I've said it out loud. Yes, I've said it out loud. None of us are perfect. So we need to admit the fact none of us are perfect. We're on a journey. We're getting better, but we're on a journey. We can't be successful in isolation. Isolationism sounds great. It's a lovely theory. We're just going to switch off everything outside this little bubble, and we're just going to carry on, and everything's going to be great. Doesn't work. Social engineering is such that it's proved not to work. I was at Symantec. I used to work for Symantec years ago, and I was there during the Stuxnet virus. Something convinced that member of the human race to take the USB key out of this device, walk across the room, and plug it into this one. They weren't connected, but social engineering convinced that person it was a good idea. So isolationism sounds lovely, but it doesn't work in reality. So we need to positively engage as stakeholders. We can do this. We live in a fantastic world, and if we work together, it's going to get even better. It's a wonderful world for our children and grandchildren to grow up in. So we need to collaborate to make sure they get the benefits. People, process, policy. Make sure we drive that into our organizations, and we take a holistic view. You need to consider all of the attack surfaces, not just the easy ones. Right? The technology is going to move fast. The technology is always going to move faster than the standards are going to move. So when we're defining those technologies, we need to work together to think, how do I assure each other? Because here's the thing. Until 29 minutes ago, very few of you in this room had ever met me before. I walked through that door an hour ago, and I'd say 99% of this room thought, I have no idea who that small bald man is. Right? Now you know I work for Huawei. Right? But none of you have any reason whatsoever to trust me. None of you should trust me, because you don't know who I am. Right? I'm just some crazy man who walked in off the street this morning. Right? So, when we're thinking about assurance, don't trust me. Work together to how do you assure yourself? What are the mechanisms that you need to see to assure yourself of the technology and the networks you're working with? And it's that building that partnership, it's that thing of trust built through execution, trust built through cooperation, trust built because we've worked together to define what it looks like, that gives us real assurance. It's about partnering. It's about us working together. As I said when I stood on this stage half an hour ago, we are remarkably proud at Huawei for the 10-year partnership we've had with Do. And we're committed to make sure that we work with Do and all of its local stakeholders and broader stakeholders to make sure that partnership continues. And we're going to do that not by telling you to trust me, but by working together to make sure we deliver the best and securest network for the citizens of Dubai. And it's about ongoing review. Cybercrime is never going to go away. It's always going to be a factor in our lives, so get over it. Let's make sure that this isn't an initiative that lasts 12 months and then we cross our hands and say, oh, we've done that, it's finished. We did that was lovely. Now we're moving on to something else. It's not like that. It is, as the governor said, like quality. It's a constant. It evolves. And we make sure that we stay at the forefront by working together. I go to a few conferences a year, not that many really. But whenever I'm at a conference, there's always a point when someone stands up and says, what we need to do, we all need to work together. We all need to share information. And at the end of the conference, we all put our coats on and we all leave and no one does anything. We all do nothing. We go back to our day-to-day lives. So we need to break the cycle. We need to do something different than we've done in the past to make sure that we're continuously improving. So to try and break the cycle, while we've published a series of white papers over the last few years on cybersecurity. So back in 2012, we published a white paper that said, this is what we think it is. We've been in the industry about 25 years at that point. We've looked at our customers, we've looked at our external stakeholders, we've looked at the consultancies, we've looked at the governments. This is what we think cybersecurity means. And then we followed that up with a white paper on, this is how we've approached trying to fix it in our organisation. This is how we've structured our business to fight cybercrime. And then we followed that up with a buying guide. These are the top 100 questions that you should be asking when you buy something, when you buy some technology. And then this year we published a white paper about supply chain management. Now the reason I say this, and the reason we published them, is that it's about sharing. Now, if you agree with the stuff in the white papers, that's all nice. What's really interesting though, what I'm really interested to hear, what don't you agree with? Where are the things that you say, you've missed something? That's lovely, Dave, but there's an important point over here you've missed. That's more valuable to me, because that enables us to change. You giving us feedback on what we're doing wrong and what we're missing helps us become a better company. And guess what? If we're a better company, we help you become a better company. And if I make my suppliers better, and my suppliers are also feeding my competitors, it makes my competitors better. And that means we raise the bar for the industry. It's about all of us getting better. Because here's the dirty secret, here's the truth. If I have a problem, or one of my competitors has a problem, or my customer has a problem, we all lose. Everyone loses. No one gains if one of my competitors has a problem. None of my competitors gain if I have a problem. Because the net result is a loss of confidence across the buying sector. It's a loss of confidence in a citizenship. So, to close, thank you very much for listening. The listening bit was very nice. What's more important is that when we leave here, we work together. Is that we realize that as societies, we've shared the gains. Well, now we share the work to make sure society is safe in the future. So with that, thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope you have a great day.